Hi all, everyone very good morning. Today our topic is what are the Apache JMeter component list. The main topic is what are the Apache JMeter component list. Example, everyone will showing there is a HP load runner components, right? There is some interview questions also, it's same way. HP load runner components list. Okay, one is VUgen virtual user generator and the second one controller after analysis. Okay, now another one, there is a latest performance center also will be added. Okay, performance center also, it's a one of the component in load runner. And some other questions will ask what are the extensions vision controller analysis performance center. Okay, means a dot extension he will asking some questions. First, HP load runner side means what are the components of load runner components. Okay, these are the components, right? The same way, what are the components in JMeter? Okay, today topic is only that one. What are the Apache JMeter component list? Okay, first one, a general components, thread group, config element, after listener, timer, preprocessor, post processor, assertions, test fragment, non-test element, sampler, logic controller, workbench, test plan. All above JMeter main component, there are some subcomponents. Subcomponents means what are the components currently I am showing. Everything there is a subcomponents also available. I will show you next that one. After final one, you need to consider JMeter all jar files and components. What are the files backend will support it to the JMeter, that files also, that jar files also, it's consider it's a components. Okay, these are the main components of JMeter. Okay, and the same time, example, thread group everyone you know, the first components of JMeter after test plan. Okay, previous versions, before 3.0 or 3. Before 3 point only 3.0 only, whenever you need to open to the JMeter, there is a two elements will be came. First one is the test plan and workbench. Okay, after 4.0 versions, nowadays it's coming only test plan. Whenever test plan, after whenever right click and you need to select something, right, most of the time the first element is a thread group. The main use is you need to add the users and design the general scenarios. Example, how many users ramp up, and how much of duration you able to execute, how many times the same test you need to execute. That are the setups you need to do, and you need to run the test. Okay, most of the testing you need to use the first element thread group only, users point of view. Config element means something you need to add the backend test data. Example, there is some you need to run the 10 user load, right? The backend you need to add the test data for 10 usernames and password test data, right? You need to give it to the in config element. That is the reason you need to use the config element. Listeners of JMeter, you need to show the output through GUI or non GUI. Otherwise you need to extract the data also through listeners. Timers means whenever you select the timer, in JMeter hit the request to server, right, it keep on, he will hold some time based on whatever timer you selected and how much of period of duration you given to the in minimum and maximum. That based the JMeter, the scenarios and the requests only you need to send to the server. Okay, after pre and post processor, it's a very important components. Most of the time you need to write any customized code and you need to use this one. Preprocessor means the word only clearly mentioned preprocessor. Before you need to send the request, something request you need to send the request to server, right? The before, what are the preprocessor he will, what are the um, program or scripting you, something you need to return to the preprocessor element, right? He will add it to our test data or our request and send to the server. Post processor means whatever data you need to coming to the in server end, that time he will add the data and show to the results. The post processor, there is a major difference before and after. Preprocessor is before send the request, post processor after send the request. Okay. Assertions. Assertion is a verify the server request. Means example something you're expecting all the request or you need to 200 only, you need to select it to the 200 the specific element in assertions. Most of the people use the response assertion, right? Commonly the response assertion you selected to the in 200 every request 200 it's came, it's success, otherwise it's fail. Otherwise something text you need to select it or images, what are the format of data you expected for every request, you can select that one. That based only the request is pass or fail, you will show into the session. Means server and data you are not able to validate it, it's not possible, right? That is test fragment. Test fragment also it's one of the element, but uh, I am also not used any time for test fragment especially. After next one, non-test element. Non-test element otherwise as a workbench. Previously workbench under available non-test element. Non-test element the main use is you need to record the scripts. What are the options you required? Example, you need to provide the server path and you need to configuration from browser end, and whenever you need to start the recording to the JMeter, and you need to what are the business flow you performed in web browser, he will capture. Okay, that is the main use of non-test element. Samplers everyone you know, it's a request or load runner, it's called protocol. Load runner side it's a protocol, JMeter is a sampler. Okay, the difference is not only license and open source, just the naming conversations only will be different, but the way of working is same. After logic controllers, the logic controllers it's not only one or two, there are so many. If controller, if else, multiple if. Okay, for loop there are so many controllers you'll use based on our scenario, you need to use the logic controllers. Workbench I am already explained, right? The workbench will provide the non-test elements and some other another two elements also will be provided, proxy element also. Test plan is the primary element for every JMeter. Whenever you need to open the JMeter, you are able to get to the in test plan first element, this one. Okay, the all above JMeter main components, this all are everything, it's a main component. There are some sub components also. The sub components, just a minute, I need to open to the JMeter. Just a minute. Okay, this is the JMeter GUI. Okay, whenever you open, this is the 5.4 version. The test plan is the first element and by default element will be mentioned. Okay, what are the first two? Last I will explain this one. First of all, test plan is a JMeter primary component. Okay, this is the primary component. You need to right click and you need to add. The main components is thread group or thread, config element, after listeners, timers, preprocessor, postprocessor, assertions, test fragment, non-test element. But you need to see in test plan it's not available the samplers available only thread group only. Okay, now you need to go to the subcomponents. First of all, thread there are thread group. BZM means blaze meter. Okay, blaze meter arrival thread group, blaze meter concurrency thread group, blaze meter preform arrival thread group, and JP upgrade GC stepping thread group, ultimate thread group, setup thread group, and tear down thread group. Okay, these are the components. The plain JMeter is not available. You need to add the plugin manager. Okay, whenever you add the plugin manager, this additional components also it's came, and most of the components you need to use to the our real-time performance testing or load testing purpose. Okay, these are the sub components for thread group. After config element, in config element, CSV dataset config, HTTP header manager, cookie manager, cache manager, HTTP request default, bolt connection configuration. You know this one, bolt connection configuration. How our using for JDBC connection configuration for database validation. Same bolt connection is a there is a one type of penetration testing purpose you need to use for bolt connection configuration. I created the separate video this purpose. I will share to you everyone. After counters, DNS cache manager, FTP request default, HTTP authorization manager, JDBC connection manager, Java request default, key store configuration, LDAP extended request default, LDAP request default, login config element, random variable, simple config element, TCP sample config, user defined variable. Okay, these are the subcomponents of config element. After listeners, there are so many is available. Listeners, view results tree, summary report, aggregate report, backend listener, aggregate graph, assertion results, comparison, assertion virtualizer, generate summary results, graph results, JSR 223 listener, mailer virtualizer, response time graph, save response to a file, simple data writer, view results in table, JP update GC, active thread overtime, performance matrix collector, response time overtime, transaction per second, bean shell listener. Okay, these are the listeners subcomponents. After timers, okay, constant timer, uniform random timer, precise throughput timer, constant throughput timer, Gaussian random timer, JSR 223 timer, Poisson random timer, synchronizing timer, bean shell timer. Okay, these are the subcomponents of timer. After moving to preprocessor, JSR 223 preprocessor, user parameters, HTML link parser, HTTP URL rewriting modifier, JDBC preprocessor, regex user parameter or regular expression user parameters, sample timeout, bean shell preprocessor. After moving to postprocessor, CSS selector extractor and JSON extractor, JSON JMES path extractor, boundary extractor. The boundary extractor latest you need to add it this version only. Okay. After regular expression extractor, JSR 223 postprocessor, debug postprocessor, JDBC postprocessor, result status action handler, XPath extractor, XPath2 extractor, bean shell postprocessor. These are the subcomponents of postprocessor. After assertions, response assertion, JSON assertion, size assertion, JSR 223 assertion, XPath2 assertion, compare assertion, duration assertion, HTML assertion, JSON JMES path assertion, MD5 hex assertion, SMIME assertion, XML assertion, XML schema assertion, XPath assertion, bean shell assertion. Test fragment, directly you would provide the only test fragment, only same element only. It's a subcomponent, non-test element, HTTP mirror server, HTTP mirror server. After HTTPS test script recorder, property display. Okay, these are the subcomponents of non-test element. Now you need to generally add one thread group. Under thread group, You can see listeners available, config, test fragment, timer, assertion, post, pre. But two options are not available. First one, sampler. Sampler, flow control action, HTTP request, debug sampler, JSR to sampler, AJP 1.3 sampler. It's a new latest you need to add it. Access log sampler, bean shell sampler, bold request. You can see how the JDBC request you need to came. Same bold request also you need to came. It's the latest one. Bold request and bold connection configuration. This is a separate validation purpose he provided. I will provide in my next video also this one. After FTP request, GraphQL HTTP request. You know anybody idea about the GraphQL? GraphQL majorly you need to use to the Node.js, React.js application development purpose. You need to use to the GraphQL also one of the type of query language. The graphical representation REST services based you need to provide the query language. Okay, how we need to write the JSON files you need to create it, right? Same JSON format only you need to create the GraphQL request. Okay, that validation purpose. Yeah, that one also will come most of the time validation purpose. I am already faced this issue. After JDBC request, JMS point to point, JMS publisher, JMS subscriber, JUnit request, Java request, LDAP extended request, LDAP request, mail reader sampler, OS processor sampler, SMTP sampler, TCP sampler. Okay, these are the subcomponents of the sampler. After logic controller, if controller, transaction controller, loop controller, while controller, critical section controller, for each controller, include controller, interleave controller, only once only controller, random controller, random order controller, recording controller, runtime controller, simple controller, throughput controller, module controller, switch controller. Okay, but most of the time you need to add the one is the transaction controller, that is the first one. Yeah, transaction controller is generally you need to use for that is one. Another one is the recording controller. Okay, every transaction place you need to mention to the transaction controller. Recording controller, all transactions only is a single controller below only you need to record it. Okay, these are the subcomponents of recording controller. Okay, now I need to add one general sample request for HTTP request and one listener I need to add. Example, you can add the HTTPS. Actually, protocol HTTP by default, HTTPS you need to add. And another one, www.google.com, port 443. Okay, method is get, and I am already added, right? Just you need to save this one. mgs 2.jmx. Okay, now I will save the request. Now I will show you how we need to use the thread group, right? In thread group, majorly continue only you need to select this option, but I will explain this process. Number of threads means how many users you given. Example, I will given 10. Okay, after ramp up period, ramp up means you need to start the testing and one by one users you need to moving, right? Example, I will giving 20 users. Loop count I will provide 1. The same request how many times you need to execute, and same time you can see same user on each iteration. Okay, but most of the people you need to use, example, you can disable this one. Whenever you select this format, only one loop count, one iteration only, ramp up period 20, number of threads 10. how you need to calculate it, right? In JMeter, 20 by 10, okay, is equal to 2 seconds. Okay, this is the 20 by 10 only, you need to calculate it, that one. 20 means ramp up period divided by number of threads. 20 by 10, it's a 2 only, you need to give 2 seconds. Every 2 seconds one user will be moving. That is the way you need to work. You need to increase the how many iterations you need, you can do after. Another method is, you can see it's infinity, right? Infinity means until you need to stop, that time only will stop. Example, I will activate this one, infinity. You will mention specified thread lifetime. Specified thread lifetime means duration you need to provide only seconds. Example, I will mention to the 10 seconds. You need to execute only 10 seconds only. You need to execute. Startup delay, you need to mention, you will wait how many seconds you need to start, after only load will be started. Same user on each iteration. Same user means whenever you mention 10 users also, you need to select the same user on each iteration. The same user only, single user only, keep on running. Delete thread creation until needed. Delete thread creation. Thread creation means the user backend logs how many you need to generate it, right? That means how many times, how much time you required, it's not generated but test is running. Okay, now the scenario is 10 users, ramp up is 20 seconds, means every user will move to the just only 2 seconds, one user will be moving. Specify them 60 seconds. Okay, now you need to run this one. You can see time 00 and users also 0 only. Okay, its test is started, right? First user every 2 seconds, right? It's moving one by one until you need to complete 60 seconds. You can see time. Otherwise you can stop the test, you can clear it, moving the request, sorry, thread group. You can go to the 40 seconds you need to do. How you need to run, you need to see. Okay, now you need to execute it, right? Based on the user load and time period you provided for the ramp up, that based users just keep on moving. You can see the users around 6, running threads 7, until 60 seconds only the test is executed. You can see until it's need to scroll down, it's coming down, right? Every new request keep on coming, you can see it's moving, right? 40, remaining 20 seconds only the users will be headed to Google web page. Yeah, remaining it done almost. Yeah, it's completed. Okay, these many requests will generated for just for 60 seconds. That reason you're not able to validate it, it able to working as expected or not. That reason you need to use the assertions and you need to validate. Now our general information will provided the sampler results and request and response state. You can choose thread name. There is no, I did not given any name, right? By default thread group 1/4. Sample start and end time, IST format will become our system based. Load time means how much time will be taken, but everything you can see it's not a seconds, it's a milliseconds. JMeter provided milliseconds. You need to convert the seconds. 1000 milliseconds is a 1 second. That way you need to consider. Okay, the response code 200, right? It's okay, no issue. After request, I send only get method and https colon double backward slash www.google.com. This is the request I sent it. There is no any cookies separately. This is the response data server end. Okay, and the same time this is a security also. Okay, server end data, users is not able to understand exactly what is sharing. After response headers also, you can see these are the response headers will be shared in server end. Okay, you can easily need to find out this type of values only need to come dynamic values. Dynamic values are you need to call the unique transaction identifiers. Okay, or unique values, different names you need to call. Dynamic value means keep on changing. Unique transaction identifier, every transaction there is a unique ID will be generated in server. That is also say identity purpose. Unique ID also it's the same only. Names only it's different names you need to call. The final generated value only one only. Okay. Okay, now maybe you understand how HP load runner components you need to call it only simply 4 only, but JMeter will provide it. There are so many components available in JMeter. Okay, the main components and sub components also. JMeter all jar files and components. Okay, jar files also it's considered it's a components. Example, you can go to example only. You can go to lib file, right? There are so many files are executable jar files. It's supported to the JMeter. You can see there are not a one or two. There are so many plugins and jar files it's supported to the JMeter. This every file also it's need to consider it as a components. All components supported based only JMeter will working as expected. You can go to ext also. There are so many plugins, right? This everything also it's a components in JMeter point of view. For as for our interview or working pattern point of view, these are the main components. Most of the questions you need to come component level. This is only majorly. No other questions or comments you need to come. Okay. Yeah, that's all guys. This video maybe most of the people you need to understand. Now it's a clear about what are the Apache JMeter components list. Okay. Yeah, that's all guys. This video I will connect to the my next video. Thanks for everyone. Bye.